ethics, the study and what the Bible teaches, how Christians are to live and how we're to act. We've come to this part of the study in which we are looking at the responsibilities in marriage and the family. And the family today, particularly here in America, is in severe crisis. Severe crisis. It is very difficult to find a biblically structured family in America today. They do exist, but they're getting rarer all the time. Today it seems that most anything that lives under a roof is called a family today, no matter how weird, strange, or unusual it may be, but far away from ever meeting the biblical principle of family. The family is the building block of all humanity, for all nations, all societies, all cultures. It is a building block. It is a block that has been designed by God and created by God. It's a very simple structure. You have a male who is married to a female, and the children that they produce are their children. And the family has certain responsibilities. By creation, they're designed for responsibilities. The man, the male, is designed to be the head of the home. In case you haven't noticed, men like to run things. It's in their DNA to run things. And men, for the most part, are pretty good at it. There are some that need a little more instructions than others, I suppose. But for the most part, they're pretty good when they have the opportunity to do that. And then the female is designed by God to be the one who will carry the child conceived for approximately 9 months and then give birth to that child. She is built for that. The man is built to be a husband and a father. The woman is built to be a wife and a mother. But today we have certainly tried to rearrange that to adopt to whatever anybody wants, no matter how extreme or unusual it is. In reality, if that becomes a part of the devil's plan to destroy the family, if the biblical family is destroyed, and historically it's true, that nation, that society, that people group breaks down and disappears. See, it's the devil's desire to destroy societies, particularly godly societies, and to attack the family and destroy the family becomes a tool in his arsenal that is extremely effective. And again, when a nation or society or a group of people depart, whether it's quickly departing or a slow drift and transformation to some other type of structure other than the biblical family structure, that society comes to an end. It perishes. It cannot survive. And America is in crisis today. The crisis is multifaceted. We have a crisis of biblically structured families in America, the lack thereof. We have a crisis of economy, that is, money. How do we survive? We have a nation, families, and individuals that are enormously in debt. And that becomes a point of self-destruction if it is allowed to go uncontrolled. And today, debt is uncontrolled. It is a generating thing in and of itself. We have inflation, which debt money lending feeds that inflation, because it gives people the illusion that no matter how much something costs, I can always borrow the money to get that product, good, or service. But all things come to an end that way. But it all comes back to the family situation. We began looking at this the last time that we met. Long-term trends. We could actually add on there long-term trends that destroy the family, destroy the nation. And we looked at A and B the last time we met. Here's one nobody seems to think a whole lot about: the decreasing family size. My father was the youngest of 8 children. And in those days, at the turn of the 20th century and the early part of the 20th century, a family of 8, 10, or 12 was not unusual. That was considered normal. It was also motivated by the fact that all family members had responsibility, which is a good thing for all families to have. Tragically today, many families, children have no responsibility at all. They just are part of the family. They come, they go, they do this, they do that as they please. But as far as having something that they are responsible to do within that family, in most cases, they don't. And that is a part of self-destruction, again, of the family and of society. But today, we've reached a point and we say we can't afford to have larger families. And that is true, again, because of the problems of inflation and debt. That tends to quell the idea that we can afford a family. A study that I saw some time ago that said, and this was several years ago now, said this: from birth, that is, from conception to 18 years of age, which it just had turned legally, 18 was considered an adult. And from conception to 18, the average, according to this study, said cost a family $875,000 per child. And it would seem that those figures are pretty accurate when you really think about the cost, and the cost of children, clothing, education, and food. Enormous costs. And what kids today, children, quote unquote, have to have, that they didn't have to have a number of decades earlier. But anyway, the decrease of size of family has a tendency to bring about the destruction of the family itself. And children become more of a burden than a blessing. And it's surprising how many children grow up like weeds. They learn street knowledge from other of their peers. You have a pooling here of ignorance. Though, since it's new in their thought, they think this is great. But they don't really know what it takes to actually live in the world. And they don't know how to deal with problems. Suicide rate among children, we're talking about those 18 and under, is at an all-time high today. Why is that? Because they do not have the resources of mom and dad to help them adjust and deal with the problems and the difficulties that they face, usually alone and by themselves. We have a term, we call them latchkey kids. Mom and dad are up and out and on their way to work. And the child gets up and has to come up with some kind of breakfast. by themselves. Plan their day, go to school, get on the bus, however they get to school. And deal with all the problems and difficulties that they find, but they don't have anybody that loves them to talk to about, because the family is so fragmented. It takes two-income families, in many cases, to survive today. Just to survive. But nevertheless, this is an enormous challenge. So again, the decreasing family size is detrimental to a good, solid family. Larger families have a tendency to become more organized, more disciplined, and they share each other's challenges, problems, blessings, disciplines, and whatever. And there's always mom and dad that are there for them. But that is becoming a rare commodity these days. D, the loss of traditional family functions. Yeah, just simply talking to your child. According to a recent study, the average father, are you listening? The average father spends 45 seconds a day in meaningful conversation with their children. What are you going to accomplish in 45 seconds a day? Not much of anything. It used to be that children interacted frequently with their parents, moms and dads, and they were accessible. And we think today, and the general thought is that when a baby is born into the world, very quickly the mother has to go back to work in order to make ends meet. Dad's already working to make ends meet. And some kind of caregiver, well, hey, it's a baby. What does it take to change the diapers, give it a bath, feed it, rock it, put it to sleep? Yeah, anybody almost could do that. That is a very important time, though, for the child and its mother to make that bond and connection, which often today does not happen. Then we think by the time they reach their teen years, well, after all, they're 6'2", 200 pounds, they can take care of themselves. And you're looking at a 13 or 14-year-old. They're not ready to take care of themselves. And they face problems. And many of them are very severe, complex problems today, created in part by the breakdown of the family unit, created in part by what is being taught in the public school system that is anti-society and anti-Christian and anti-biblical, to say the very least. And they're fed all this stuff, and they don't know how to deal with situations. Teenagers, by nature, don't particularly care to talk to mom or dad. But on occasions, they want to talk to mom and dad. But if mom and dad is not there, if mom and dad is too busy, they don't have anybody to talk to. And that creates a crisis in that child's life. And that can end up with, like so many, how are we dealing with these problems that they face? By committing suicide, abuse of drugs, all kinds of things that go on that they face, that they need some stability in their life. A child needs its parent. A parent has a responsibility today about 20 years. That's all you have to make an impact on your child. And often today, in those 20 years, everybody else is giving input to your child, and you're putting in very little input to them. This is, again, leading to the destruction. Family functions that used to be normal, eating a meal together, the whole family together. I remember that's all we all did at the house. Breakfast together, lunch together, supper together. That was the way it was. That was normal. That was good. But those things are missing today. E, the changing morality in our society. I think probably we had better take the word morality out there and put the word immorality. We live in a very immoral culture today. Fundamental rules, regulations, principles that are set down biblically by God have been tossed out the window. We don't want those anymore. We want to do it our way. And that is a collision course for destruction of the family. It really is. We have departed. Today we've reached a point of what the Bible warns us about. We've reached a point in which today we call the good things of God evil. And we call the evil things, we're calling them good now. And I've watched immorality become normal in American culture. That's normal today. Nobody considers anything wrong with that. That's just the way it is. That's just the way things are. But those things come about because of the breakdown of the family. Where is Dad? Where is Mom? What are they doing? Oftentimes, everything but what God expects them to do in a family relationship. That's very important. Keep in mind. The changing, the breakdown of morality in our culture. F, widespread corruption in government, industry, and at all levels of society. Just stop and take a breath and think about how many things that were corrupt that today you are interacting with. We have become a nation of people that are liars. You can't function in our culture, so it would seem, without lying. Tell the story to get your agenda, whatever that agenda may be. Truth has nothing to do with it. But it is a destructive force. But it's become normal today. You look at government today. Now, there are many good people that work in government trying to do the right thing, but they're overwhelmed by so many that are in government that are seeking and desiring to do the wrong things. And these things are destroying the family. G, declining morality even in churches and ministries. What? That's happened so often today that it's hardly noticed anymore. Some of the biggest names in ministry today have fallen into egregious sin. As a young Christian, growing up, plugged into a solid Bible church. The pastor there taught and preached the Bible. You never heard of some of the things that are going on that are immoral in those days. Today, it seems like every time you turn around, you read about it, hear about it. It's on the evening news somewhere. Again, we're falling away. There's a departure from biblical truth called apostasy. And as a result, this affects even people in church. And so sin has not crept into the church. At one time it did creep in, but it is moved in, announced. And we're changing things to accommodate and embrace sin in all forms, fashions, and whatever. Recipe for destruction. H, declining male leadership, headship. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 25 set the principle. Men need to be men. We need to take leadership of our lives. We need to take leadership of our family. There needs to be a submission of the wife to the leadership of the husband. This is biblical. This is God's plan. And to try to engineer other things in and twist it around and shift it this way, shake it down over here, and come up with something new is not the answer. That's the destruction that comes. We need to be very, very careful on these matters. We need to recognize that God created the male. Every part of a male, he has been created by God to be. Likewise, God knew that Adam, the first male, was not complete by himself. He needed somebody to complete him. So the Bible tells us that God became a skillful surgeon. He put Adam to sleep. The Bible says he put him in a deep sleep. And then the Bible says he removed a side. People say rib. Well, the actual original language says the side. He took a side out of. Was it the left side or the right side? Doesn't say. But he took one side. Maybe if you're left-handed or right-handed, who knows? But he took a side. And he took that side, and then he closed up. Literally, when he closed up Adam, everything that he had taken out of Adam came back together. Not even a scar. And then he took what he took out of Adam. And in the mighty hands of God, he formed, fashioned a female, Eve. Like Adam in many respects, but different. The male and the female in the Bible, when they come together, that is, they get married. When they get married and they come together, the two of them together are called not the human race, but they're called man. Together. Today in our culture, we have a tendency to say that the male is the man. And the female, well, she's female. But the fact is, biblically speaking, the two together make up man. And they complement each other. We'll see that a little later on here in this study. But we need to realize that we have departed a long way from biblical principle. Little by little, decade after decade, for probably the last 150 or so years, we have been moving away from biblical principle. the biblical family. And things are in a very bad state at this point. Even the sociologists, here's what sociology has been telling us. Even sociologists are reporting that female dominance is partly to blame for the following. Here's 4 things that are listed. We have today said we got to make the woman, the female, the wife, we've got to make her equal with man. Well, she already is equal with man. It takes Adam, it takes Eve to make man. They're equal, but they're different. And the difference is what we don't want to accept. Under God's direction and instruction, Adam was to lead his wife. He was the head of the home. The wife, Eve, was to complete, support her husband. The term that is used and translated in our English Bible is helpmeet. The woman that God created for Adam was a helpmeet, meaning she was a helper in perfect compatibility with who Adam is. Everything he was made to be, Eve was made to plug into that and be compatible to assist and help him as they lived and had their family. Incidentally, the Hebrews tradition says that Adam and Eve had in their lifetime. Now you got to remember that in those days, the average life expectancy was 930 years. Some didn't live quite that long, and a few lived longer than that, and the oldest person who ever walked the face of this earth was a man by the name of Methuselah. He lived 969 years. But in the 900 plus years of Adam and Eve's life, the Hebrew tradition is that they had 78 children. And you'd say, oh my. Well, again, things were a lot different back then than they are today. And the world's population did grow very rapidly during that period of time, which was called the antediluvian world, a period of time that lasted between 1,500 and 2,500 years, as best as we can calculate. And in that period of time, when you have people living to be an average age of 930 years, you have a lot of children born to families. They were enormous families, and so on. Well, we come today. We're living today, but we departed from the fact that this female dominance today in the home. And I can tell you that I have talked with some men that I'm just absolutely amazed of what I hear. That they're basically slave labor in some of the cases that I have come across in my years of ministry. Number one, the female dominance is increasing divorce rates. Dominating females reduce men to wimps and then are not happy with them. Thus, a divorce occurs. Wow. Now, I remind you, it's the sociologists that are coming up with these things. That's what they're seeing. That's what they're concluding. Number two, impotence in men. Can you imagine? Because he is emasculated. He can't function like God intended him to function. So that's on the increase. Increasing promiscuity and cohabitation, forsaking marriage altogether, is a byproduct, again, of female dominance. Wow. There's a certain segment of the American culture today that you have a matriarch in the family, not a patriarch, which would be the male, a matriarch, female, who assumes the responsibility of the male. And in the twisted thinking, in many cases, in certain parts of the culture of our country, it's rampant. They have a number of children by different men. They may or may not have been married to those men, but each one of those men have come and those have gone. And they have children that have only a mother that has become a matriarch. Again, all this is part of the promiscuity and cohabitation, forsaking marriage altogether. Number 4, it also increasing homosexual activity and lesbianism. When you get away from God's plan, things go downhill rapidly. If you will look closely at every situation, the farther away the society and the people get away from God, the great danger of destruction of the family becomes paramount, and the importance of getting back to a biblical standard if we hope to survive